Well, my dear friends, this is only a short video, but it's something that I felt needed to be said. I've put several other videos on YouTube, and I wasn't sure if there was any other subject I could talk about. And this is one thing that I, as I said, feel needs to be put out there for those who don't know this. I'm just using my ordinary webcam at the moment, so sorry about the resolution of the image. I hope the sound's okay. I won't know till I play it back. Excuse me. For those who don't know about me, I am an ex-RAF radio technician, and during my 9 years in the RAF, in the latter 3 years or so, I became an official investigator for several UFO groups, including Bufora, nothing to do with the RAF, of course, and got quite a bit of experience interviewing people and learning about what people were seeing. But one of those individuals I came across at the time, in the late 1990s, late 1970s, go back 20 years earlier, was in fact a genuine contactee whom I've been studying myself for over 35 years now, and as a result of being something of a student under a genuine contactee who, when he passed away in 1997, had had 43 years of well-documented contacts with real extraterrestrials, I feel that I have something to say. I'm extremely saddened when I look on YouTube, because when you get rid of all the nonsense and the people jumping on the bandwagon and the purposeful misinformation, it becomes obvious that there are a lot of people out there. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. It becomes obvious that there are those who genuinely believe certain things and are being as honest as they can, but are nevertheless, shall we say, misinformed. Now, people may say that of me. Judge for yourself. I can't prove anything. Every individual has to find out for themselves what they want to believe. It's not up to anyone to prove it to you. It's up to you to find out for yourself what you want to believe, as indeed I have done and many people before me have done. But after 35 years of studying under a good teacher, I have learned certain fundamental concepts which need to be explained. One is that, I've mentioned this in other talks too, is that around this earth there are 6 other physical worlds, planes or realms which are quite natural. But unfortunately, due to the evil small percentage on this planet, some of whom have been here for a very long time, what has happened is that 4 non-natural or unnatural planes, realms or worlds have come into existence in association with this Earth, realms which don't exist on other planets, although the 6 above the one we're on do exist on other planets in this system. In a similar way that when you put water and oil in a glass jar, they will separate due to their viscosity, or whatever the scientific term is, but you understand what I mean, their density, viscosity, whatever, they will separate out. A similar situation exists within human beings, and to a lesser extent animals, of course, and that is that around this body here, and permeating it, there is a more subtle aspect to the body known as the aura, and it contains certain energy vibratory patterns that we create for ourselves, some of which are impressed from outside, but the main ones to think about are the ones that we impress on our aura or in our aura. When we come to the end of this particular life, and like the driver getting out of the car, we get out of this body, we gravitate to a plane or realm where that auric vibration is more suited. Those who have a more, shall we say, evil tendency will gravitate, forgive the expression, downwards, not spatially downwards, but downwards in terms of vibration, onto a lower plane. And they congregate on the lower astral planes, as they are called. If we just use a numbering system to make it easy to understand, if we call this world, this plane that we see around us now, plane 1, there are 6 other coexistent planes here in this space, which we can call planes 2 up to plane 7. But these lower astral realms we can refer to as -1 to -4. They consist of matter, as physical as that, but nevertheless made up of matter that is vibrating slower than the matter here does. Even though it's a slower plane of vibration, nevertheless, once you get away from this basic organic robot body that we're using here, you exist, whether you go on to the lower planes or the higher planes, you exist in more of an energy form of body, and as a result the thinking process is well enhanced compared to what you can do here with an organic brain. Your physical movement is much enhanced. Even an elderly person, 70 and 90 years old, when they pass out of the body can be quite sprightly compared to what they were here. But the point is, those who pass on to the lower realms, and there are unfortunately some scientists and engineers who find themselves down there. I'm not criticizing those groups of people, because there's bad in all, as well as good in all. But some of them who pass down there are scientifically and engineering-wise quite knowledgeable and experienced. And of course there are some very, very evil entities down there as well. And the resources available are drawn on, and have been for hundreds of thousands, even millions of years. You imagine yourself in an environment where you can think easier, and if you want to create something, you just use your thoughts and you can create out of the ether physical matter, which you can do. You can even do it on the astral realms when you pass out of the body. You will be able to do this. This is incidentally how Jesus created the loaves and the fishes. Having samples in front of him to go by, he used visualization. He was a thought creator to produce copies. He could do it on this plane where the vibration isn't particularly good. But ordinary souls like myself, on the astral realms it will be a lot easier, but here I don't think I stand much of a chance. But on the lower realms, especially if you've got an evil intent, you can create weapons or tools for deception relatively easily. And because this has been going on for hundreds of thousands, and as I said, millions of years, on these lower realms, they do actually have aspects of science and engineering, which is well in advance of anything we've got, or at least the general public is familiar with, on this plane. When in especially the late 1940s into the early 1950s, real extraterrestrials were visiting this planet more frequently, the evil manipulators on the lower realms saw this as a threat. Now they could not stop the real extraterrestrials from coming. So all they could do to counter any good that they might do is to create mock flying saucer sightings, mock contacts themselves, but introduce an element of fear to scare people away. This they have been doing, and the strategy has to some extent, in fact quite largely, worked. I'll make a categorical statement which might make me unpopular, but if it's understood, it shouldn't. Not once in the whole history of mankind on Earth have any extraterrestrials ever abducted an Earthman or woman, an Earth person. Doesn't happen. What has happened is that in order to create fear, the lower astral entities on these lower realms of Earth, they have produced replica, you might call them, flying saucers, which are quite convincing to the uninitiated. I mean, even to the expert, they would look like the real thing from outside of the Earth. But you would see the difference when it comes to performance. I mean, the real spacecraft could do 30,000, 50,000 miles an hour in the Earth's atmosphere, no observable heat or noise. They can do right-angle turns at that speed, or zigzag flight paths, spiral up or down motions, you know, at 30, 50,000 miles an hour quite easily. Unfortunately, or should I say fortunately, we on this Earth, we can't do things like that. Some pretty impressive performance with some craft that have been produced here, but nothing like the real extraterrestrial ones. So what has actually happened is they've produced these craft, whether it's through genetic engineering or whatever the methodology or the process is, they have produced these idiotic, absolutely absurd things that people refer to as the greys, which are not extraterrestrial. These ball-headed, spindly-bodied apple pip eyes, you know, so-called aliens. They do not come from outside of this Earth, period. They are from the lower astral realms of this Earth. By one method or another, they are artificially produced. Some of these are the, I was going to say gremlins, what do you call them? The demons of medieval ages. It's the same things, they're just given by, referred to by a different name now. And these, with their spacecraft, supposedly, have tricked millions of government officials, military, seasoned UFO investigators, and most certainly millions, possibly, of armchair debaters who never bother to do any homework anyway. You know, and millions of people have been fooled by these, and it's all part of a fear campaign. Let me tell you something about real extraterrestrials. I've got an idea. I once heard an address, a recording from somebody who lives in Los Angeles. I can't quote it verbatim, but I'll give the gist of what he said. Imagine this, in your mind's eye, imagine this scene. Imagine that you're out in space, and in front of you, you can see the beautiful backdrop of star-studded space. It's not black, I believe it's a deep violet colour, something like that. But it's a beautiful panorama of stars and planets, even galaxies that you can see with the naked eye when you're out there in space. Whether you're in a spacesuit looking through the visor, or whether you're in a spacecraft looking out through the window, whatever, but you can see this wonderful panorama, and it's mind-blowing in its spectacular appearance. I've just had a sweet and I've got it stuck in my throat. Sorry about that. Now imagine as you're taking in this wonderful panorama, into view comes a wonderful spacecraft, and like a beautiful, almost like it's ballet, it's graceful, a spacecraft probably 10 miles, 20 miles long, and they create them a lot bigger than that, I can assure you. This most wonderful piece of technology in the distance glides silently, well of course it's all silent in space, silently in front of you and stops directly in front of you, maybe several miles away. But it's the most beautiful piece of technology you've ever seen. You know, reflecting the sunlight with scintillating colours coming off the hull. And it's the result of hundreds of thousands of centuries of unbroken scientific technology, scientific development. by beings who are millions of years senior to us. A spacecraft that probably weighs millions of tons. You know, it's metal and other materials, and it's heavy, and it's made of physical metal. Probably not metals that we have on this Earth, incidentally. And this millions of tons of spacecraft has technology such that in the blink of an eye it can move from being absolutely stationary to travelling more than 4 million times the speed of light. You know, you could take a breath, and in the time it takes you to take one breath, that spacecraft could probably travel 10 or 20 light years in the time of one breath. Wonderful technology. Amazing, even our science fiction writers haven't come close. And then imagine this most wonderful spacecraft piloted by the Lord Buddha. That is what you're dealing with real extraterrestrials. Not these absurd little greys that come from the lower astral realms. They're not aliens, they're not extraterrestrials. Not in 100 million years are they extraterrestrials. But they have been so convincing at what they've done, and there's so much propaganda, so much misinformation, that millions of people have been taken in. No extraterrestrial does ever need to abduct an Earthman. I know of a true story of a contactee. It's a contactee, the best one on record, and you can quote me on this. The name is Sir George King, and you can investigate this yourself. Sir George King. The best set of contacts on record. 43 years of well-documented contacts with real extraterrestrials who physically live on other planets in this solar system. He's had more contact with the real beings than any other contactee. Not my word, it's documented. Check it. Because he's had this contact, excuse me, he's able to make comments about these beings, etc. He's had visits to their spacecraft many times. He's even been allowed to pilot spacecraft before now. On one occasion, he was taken in a small scout craft up to a mothership that was in orbit of Earth. I believe it was at an altitude of just over 1,500 miles. And he was taken by one of the controllers of this wonderful mothership, taken into a room where, I don't know how many, but there was at least one, what we would call it like a TV monitor, you know, a video screen. There may have been others, but I can only recall him mentioning one. And when the two of them looked at this monitor, they could see the Earth below them, 1,500 miles below them. And the contactee, George King, actually said that the Earth, in the image of the Earth, looked so real it was almost that you could reach in and touch it. It was so real. And it was at a time of day when the night-day Terminator had just gone past Britain and was just moving into the Atlantic Ocean. This suite is playing up, excuse me. Sorry about that. And the controller adjusted a control as to the side of the monitor, and it was as if a camera zoomed in to Britain, London, Mayfair. And the two of them, from 1,500 miles away, watched a drunk walking through the streets of Mayfair in the dark. Another adjustment of the control, and this camera zoomed in. And from 1,500 miles away, the two of them were looking at the atoms in the man's aura. Not in his basic physical body, in his aura. And they could see this inebriate's ugly, sickly coloured, jostling atoms in this man's aura from 1,500 miles away. They don't need to abduct anyone. A spacecraft, probably hundreds of thousands of miles away from this Earth, could select, using their instrumentation, any one individual on this Earth, any individual on this Earth, on any of the planes from -4 up to +7. And they could do a complete analysis, physical, physiological, mental, emotional, any psychic, anything you like. Do a complete assessment of that individual from those thousands of miles away, and the individual being examined would never know. They don't need to abduct people. I will tell you this, and I know of actual cases. I've been a student of this contactee for 35 years. There have been times, and I'm not going to detail here, but there have been times when not only this planet but this solar system has come under attack during my lifetime. And if you're anything like my age, it will be during your lifetime too. And in every instant, forces came to bear that stopped the attack dead. You know, is it under Cheyenne Mountain that the Americans have that base, you know, where they claim that they have radar and satellite, whatever, observation of the whole planet, that nobody can launch a missile or even take off in an aircraft without them knowing. They can watch all the space debris and all the satellites. They know all the movements of everything, all the technology in the air and in space, you know, from that one place in Cheyenne Mountain. They can watch it all. Similarly, it's either on Phobos, one of the Martian moons, or actually on Mars, I'm not quite sure which. But they have apparatus, equipment, which can monitor all movements throughout the solar system on all of the planes. No spacecraft can be brought into this solar system without them knowing. And because of the advancement of some of the individuals in this solar system, I mean physiological, evolutionary advancement, without moving from the spot, even some individual millions of miles away, the person can tune in and do a complete assessment of anyone coming, and if any malevolency was intended, they would be stopped, and they would be stopped dead in their tracks. They wouldn't even be allowed into this solar system if they had wrong intent. That is true. So no, all through our history we've been protected by them, because they know we cannot defend ourselves. That takes me on to a certain gentleman who seems to have a very good brain, but likes playing mind games. A gentleman who sits in a wheelchair. I'm not being too critical of him, because like many of us, you know, we're all victims to one extent or another of the conditioning. But this gentleman in the wheelchair, and you know who I mean, made a comment. He's probably said it several times. You have to be very careful with our radio and television transmissions, because if any aliens out there pick these up, they may come and attack us. And you've also got the Mr. Brian Cox with his astronomy program, who says, well, you know, we're looking out at space with telescopes and radio telescopes, and we're trying to detect, you know, life out on there on the other planets. And then you've got NASA with their probes on Mars, you know, and other places, supposedly. And they say we're looking for signs of life, and every one of them is totally ignoring 6 and 7 foot tall Martians and Venusians that are walking around the Earth. And some of them have been here a long time. You know, you've got Martians and Venusians here. There's a Saturnian that I know about on the planet at the moment. There's been another Saturnian in the past several times. There have been Martians here. I believe there have been Jovians from Jupiter here. I think we've had more visitors from Venus than any other planet in the system. You know, the Sanat Kumara, who came to this Earth 18,600,000 plus years ago and left in 1956, was a highly elevated Venusian. The Lord Buddha, who came here in the past, left, and in 1956 returned to Earth and is on Earth now, and took over from the Sanat Kumara so that the Sanat Kumara could leave, and Buddha took over his place. Buddha is from Venus. Another person who came from Venus just over 400 years after Buddha, known to millions as Jesus, from the bright and morning star, a Venusian. I think the Lord Maitreya might be Venusian. I'm not 100% on that, but I think he is. In May 1958, a Venusian who went under the name of Valiant Thor landed a 300-foot scout craft 14 miles south of Washington, D.C., and he was escorted by American police officers to the Pentagon, where he lived for 3 years. He met President Eisenhower and Vice President Nixon, both of whom fully accepted who and what he was. They realized that they couldn't contain him. If you've seen the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, you know when the visitor gets shot and they put him in a hospital room and they lock him in, and when they come back he's gone. Well, it was a bit like that with Valiant Thor. I mean, he didn't get shot, but they couldn't contain him, so they didn't try. And he had completely free movement, because if they locked him in a room somewhere, he'd just dematerialise and rematerialise somewhere else. And he was seen at least once and possibly several times dematerialising in front of people. And he could do that. And he looks as physical as any of us. There are actually photographs of Valiant Thor, his vice commander, who was known as Don, D-O-N-N, and 3 ladies who were in the crew. There's a photograph of the lady called Jill, beautiful looking, I mean amazingly beautiful blonde lady called Jill. There's several photographs out there. Look on the internet for Valiant Thor and you'll see photographs of Valiant, or Val as he liked to be called, Don and Jill. There are several photographs of the 3 of them, and also Dina and Teal, 2 of the other ladies who were senior members of his crew on the 300-foot scout craft. From Venus, you know. We know the names of some of them. I said, I'm trying to remember how I phrased it. We've had more visitors from Venus. We've had several from Saturn. Well, 2 actually that I can think of from Saturn. The great Lord Krishna was a Saturnian. Although he lived on Earth many centuries ago for a while, he did revisit back in the 1960s. It was possibly only for a few hours, but he did come back to Earth momentarily in the 1960s, mid-60s. But there is another Saturnian, millions of years possibly more advanced than the Lord Krishna, who has been here a very long while. Now, I need to stress, you know, the fact that they don't die. They don't reincarnate like we do. The Sanat Kumara, this is not a guess. It's a logged time period. You know, so it's an accurate dating. The Sanat Kumara came to Earth 18,617,841 years before the birth of Jesus, and he stayed, certainly for the most part, right up until 1956 when he left and the Lord Buddha returned to take his position, both of them from Venus. If you think 18,600,000 years is a long time to spend on a planet that's not your own, now think of this. I'm going to quell another one of the subjects that gets debated a lot. Whenever life is introduced onto a planet or a moon, etc., it is never by chance, not ever. Whenever it's intended for life to be introduced into a new, what's the word? I can't think of the word, sorry about that. Habitat, that word will do. There is always a being of a sufficient advancement who oversees the introduction, and either he or someone following him will make sure that that evolving life has everything it needs in order to evolve. Whether the evolving life uses what's made available for it is a different matter, but every life form that is evolving has available to it everything it needs to evolve. That's true. And there's always intelligence behind it. It never just happens, not ever. The individual who is responsible, primarily, for the introduction originally of life on this earth probably more than 3 billion years ago was a great master who came here from Saturn. He has been known by at least two, probably more than that, but two names that I know of through history, and is still here now, this moment, as far as we know, and we don't have a real name for him. He's so evolved that we're not even allowed to know his real, we don't deserve to know his real name, and he's just known as the Great Father. He is known as Babaji, the Lord Babaji, and he is the most advanced master living on this earth. He is the Lord of the earth. As such, he has completely free movement on this earth as he sees fit. He can dematerialize in India or Tibet, rematerialize in America or Britain or South America fractions of a second later. He's got free movement geographically. He can move between the planes. He is the Lord of the earth. He has complete freedom of movement depending on what he considers necessary. He came to Earth, as I said, something in the region of 3 billion years ago, and he's still here now. And in recent times he has said that he may remain on this earth until the end of her current incarnation, which is possibly another 3.5 billion years. You know, imagine being on a planet for 6 billion years, a planet that's not your own, not the one that you came from. That is service. That is true service. And he has always, as far as I can ascertain, looked like he's in his mid-20s. If he came into your room now, he would look like he's, 24, 25 maybe? But he always has done. Doesn't age. Just the same as when you go through your initiation of ascension, you won't age. It's only these biochemical, organic robots that we inhabit for a time. These age, yes. But when you come out of this, you're in an energy body, and the energy body doesn't age. Same as these beings don't. The whole point of mentioning all of this is because what has happened is that over hundreds of thousands of years, the more evil individuals within our race have tended to congregate together on the lower vibratory realms of this earth, known as the lower astral realms, and they have been able to produce tools to help them, spacecraft, passable spacecraft, which they can move between the planes from the lower realms onto this plane, and trick people into believing that they are seeing real extraterrestrials when in fact they are not. It's all part of a fear campaign that has been going on all through our history. No extraterrestrial has ever abducted a human being from Earth, not ever. But lower astral entities have done this pretending to be extraterrestrials in order to create fear, and that is the reason for it. I'm just going to check this now and make sure that the recording is okay. Thank you very much.